Hello everyone, Alyssa Lightman here with Realty One Group Dockside, and welcome back to another episode of The Lightman Show. Make sure you give this video a like, share with your friends and family, and you can also comment with any questions or topics you would like us to talk about in the next videos. In the previous episodes, we talked about putting your home on the market, and we also talked about market analysis and how to understand it. Today, we'll be talking about common mistakes homeowners make when putting their home on the market. We'll also have a guest on the show, and I will share my top pick of the week. Let's get started. Our guest today is a home inspector that has traveled all around the U.S., it feels like. He has experience in construction, home design, architecture, and much, much more. Please welcome Scott Campbell. So Scott, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your expertise and knowledge with us. So I'm really glad you were able to make it.
Thank you. I appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely. Well, Scott, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am originally from the Washington, D.C. area, and I've lived, about 15, 20 different places throughout the country.
I know you said you were a big traveler, so...
Yeah. California, the D.C. area, Ohio, Georgia, Massachusetts, New Hampshire.
Wow. Let's just name the places where you haven't been, and then
There's
you'll make it shorter.
There's not very many, that's for sure.
Okay, good. Well, how did you end up being an inspector? I know you had experience with architecture, right? You did landscaping. You did a lot of different things, construction, right?
Yep. It was just kind of a natural progression of all of the things that I had done up to this point. Like you said, architecture, construction. I owned a home improvement company. I worked for a property management company. I designed landscapes and pools, irrigation engineering, home services. As a matter of fact, I put myself through college by installing heating and air systems in Atlanta in brand new homes. So I kind of got tired of the office 9 to 5 thing, meetings and subcontractors and all that stuff. So when my wife and I decided to make a move back to this side of the country, it was just kind of a natural progression. Yeah, I love it.
And how did you guys decide Myrtle Beach is where you need to be?
Actually, we didn't plan on coming to Myrtle Beach. We were looking at Charleston area, and my father decided, since we weren't going to be living in California near him anymore, that he would move here also. He wanted to be around the grandkid.
He wanted to follow you guys, yeah.
Yeah, and the grandkid. I don't know how much he wanted to be around me, but he certainly wanted to be around his grandson. So
sure.
He had a real estate agent in Charleston, and they just could not find the piece of property that he was looking for. So she suggested he come up here and look. And within a day of being here, he called me and said, "You need to stop looking in Charleston and come up to Myrtle Beach and look." And so I took a trip out here, and that was it. We were sold. Good. So here we are.
So how long have you guys been here in Myrtle Beach?
Just over a year.
Over a year.
Yep, just over a year.
And how do you like it?
Love it. We will be here at least until my son graduates high school.
Good. So since you've been with inspections, how long have you been doing inspections now?
I've been doing home inspections since I've been here, so for just over a year.
Okay.
But my maintenance jobs before that were basasially
with your
the same thing.
And everything else. Okay. So tell me a little bit about the inspections that you're doing. I know when we talked before, you mentioned historic properties. You mentioned really different properties. So let's hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about doing inspections in this area particularly is there's such a wide range of ages to homes, types of homes, construction techniques, you name it. We do some of the historic buildings in downtown Georgetown. So we've done the Kaminsky House, which was built in 1769. We've done the Keith House, which was built in 1825, all the way up to new construction here in Myrtle Beach. As a matter of fact, I designed my father's home that's being built on the beach, and we're doing phase inspections on that. So we've been inspecting it since the foundation and the pylons went in, pre-drywall. They're still working on it, so now it's to the trim phase. So I think we've done 3 or 4 inspections on that home already. So it's pretty fascinating stuff.
And everything's doing well?
Yeah, the group he has building that home is pretty spectacular. They really have attention to detail, so it's going well.
Good. Well, I'm glad that you guys have been working so much, and you've been doing a lot of like different properties, especially the historic ones are really interesting.
They are.
Could you tell me like a story or something that you thought would be maybe funny or different?
Well, something that's different about the historic properties is, especially something like the Kaminsky House, which is actually a museum now, is when they discontinue all the old systems, the heating system, the electrical system, the plumbing system, they don't remove it entirely. So they just update and build the new system alongside. So you get to see the progression of a heating and air system from, when it was a wood-burning fireplace back in the 1700s all the way through a new system now.
So they don't remove the wiring or the actual systems? They just leave them there?
Yeah, a lot of times it's just left in place. They just disconnect them. Some of the stuff they remove because it's too large to leave in there. But for the most part, the old wiring systems are left in place. A lot of the plumbing's been disconnected because it is a museum and it does a lot of water damage if you leave the old plumbing in. But you can still see remnants of it. They don't take it all out. So yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff.
Is it because it's expensive that they don't remove that, or because it might?
Maybe. I think part of it is because they just want to preserve at least some of the history, so that you can see how they used to do things as opposed to how they do them now.
Well, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of neat to see.
It might be a good spot to go visit then.
It is. Kaminsky House is a great museum. I think the Keith House, I actually saw more of the internal structure because it was a bed and breakfast and a personal residence. So I could actually get in behind the walls. I mean, there was actually openings where I could climb up through the walls in that house. So I saw a lot of interesting stuff in there. Old handmade nails, peg and mortise.
Is that anyone can see that, or is that just you because you were inspecting the property? So we can't,
right?
Us mortals can't look at that, huh?
I don't know if they do tours of the basements for just the regular touring public.
That wouldn't be too safe.
Yeah. You kind of have to watch where you're stepping and where you're walking in some of those areas. So I'm not sure, but it's neat for me to be able to see it because I love that type of stuff.
And when was that built, the Keith?
Keith House, I believe, was 1825. Kaminsky House was 1769.
Well, good. That's a lot of good information. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I think it's time now to join the team. Today we'll be talking about common mistakes homeowners and sellers make when putting their home on the market. So for me as a real estate agent, the most frustrating mistake is overpricing your home. Putting your home on the market with a price way over market value that it scares buyers away. Not only so, it also stays on the market for so long that buyers think now something is wrong with it. What do you guys think?
I completely agree. I mean, that's probably the most common mistake that a seller makes, in pricing their home. And they really have to listen to their realtor's advice because you guys know what the market will take.
Exactly. I mean, we have no benefit in telling a seller that their home is worth more than it actually is or less.
Right, because then you're not going to sell it and then you're not going to get a commission. So your goal is to get the highest price you can for them.
Best price we can, yeah, exactly. When you price the home right, it sells very quickly.
Yeah, I think it's it's on the seller, it's on the agent as well. It's about education, right? So if you have an agent that is doing a presentation to a potential home seller, it's important that that agent is coming with the correct information, market data, to really show the seller what is actively selling that's most comparable to their home in that marketplace. And at the end of the day, if I were an agent and I knew that the seller was not being realistic, and some sellers, think their home, I put this into my home, I put that into my home, that's why my home is worth more than anyone else's home. A lot of time that's more personal than it is reality. So I would say, yes, that would be very frustrating on the agent side, but it is in the agent's best interest to show all the data and do their best that they can do to really educate the seller as to what the value of their home is.
And we share the market analysis. The market analysis is there for a reason. It's not just a suggestion, it's actual information of what the home is worth. And that's very important for homeowners to understand and to take seriously. Now, if the price you're looking at or the range that's been suggested by the market analysis isn't something that you can do, or maybe you're not in a position to sell your home at that price or with the market value that you have right now, then you have other options. You can either maybe wait, not put it on the market yet, although we don't know, there's no guarantee that the market's going to go up or down, so you're risking with that. So you kind of have to think about, do I really need to sell it? And what am I willing to do to get it sold? Is market value now is a good idea? And if it's not, then maybe other options like rental. If you really need to move, maybe use it as a rental.
If you don't need the equity, yeah.
Have you ever considered not representing a seller who doesn't agree with your market analysis?
I have multiple times. Yeah, well, sometimes it depends. If there is some hope with a property, then you're thinking, okay, well maybe we can put it on the market and see what happens. We do our best. We present it as much as as possible. We market it, get professional pictures, everything that we can do. And if it doesn't, we're not getting any bites or any showings even, then we have to consider dropping the price and doing other things to it.
And sometimes I would assume the sellers may agree to that and say, listen, I think my home is worth X, let's give it a shot. Now, I know you're going to talk about it later, homes being on the market with that give it a shot mentality and turning into a stale listing.
Testing the market.
Right, testing the market. Yeah, exactly. And most times I'm sure that works against them and not for them.
Yeah, especially if they keep it for that price for so long, and then buyers are thinking, oh, something's wrong with this house. It's beautiful, but no one put an offer on it. It's still here, and it's been here for a year. Now buyers are looking at other things because they're not so sure. So.
For me, the most common mistake that sellers might make would be, actually, it happens not fairly frequently, more often than you would expect, and that is sellers will fail to tell me that one of the owners of the property have passed away.
Oh no.
It's one of those things that you expect they would tell you immediately, and we've had situations before where we don't find out until the last minute.
And what is that too?
Well, it depends on what the situation is. If the property is owned joint tenants or right of survivorship, then it's not a problem. We just need a death certificate. So that's an easy fix. If it was not owned as joint tenants or right of survivorship, then we might have to go through the probate court and begin the probate process before we get authority to sell. And that usually could take maybe a month and a half to get that authority to sell, depending upon the situation.
So now the buyers...
If they have a will, if they don't have a will, all those things are going to matter. And so, and then there may be a situation where it has to go all the way through the probate process. Then we've got a really long wait before we can sell it. So it really depends on what the situation is for those clients as to whether or not it's, a small fix or a big fix. But it happens more often than you would think. People just don't tell us, and it is, when we do find out, it usually is just in passing conversations that we're having with the client. We're like, oh, mom passed away. Okay. But another mistake that clients make, sometimes sellers will make, is not preparing to receive your funds, your disbursement. So a lot of attorneys will wire the funds to you, and so sellers forget to bring their bank account information, and they can't fill out that wire sheet, so it delays things a little bit.
A couple of days or so.
And maybe a couple of hours, depending upon how quickly they get back.
I think that's important, right? Not just buying a home, what the do's and don'ts of buying a home, but the do's and don'ts of selling a home. And that's often, kind of brushed over. People don't really, so I think this is a great episode. From what I see, sometimes the seller's just not being prepared for their next move from a financial perspective. It happens very often in my world. They're selling one home, buying another home. And I just had a call the other day, and they're like, wow, our home sold. Now we've got to think about buying another home. And they haven't gone through any pre-approval process. They haven't gone through anything. And here they are now with a contract on their home. And are they financially prepared, qualified,
Right.
to do the next step that they thought that they were going to do? Thankfully, in that case, absolutely very well qualified, but there are certainly cases that I've seen in the 27 years where folks just weren't prepared, not qualified, and now they're scratching their head saying, where do we move? We got to rent something.
They just assumed that because they're selling this house, they're going to get X in cash, they're going to qualify,
Right.
and circumstances change, loan requirements I'm sure change throughout the years, and so yeah, that makes sense. Scott, what about you?
I think the number one problem I see, a mistake that sellers make, is not getting a pre-listing inspection. I mean, think about the process of selling a home. You've gone through listing, you've gone through showings, offer, you've accepted an offer. You get down to the last 10 days basically of due diligence, and now you have a home inspector coming in. And you don't know what you're going to find a lot of the times. Maybe simple things that you find, and those are easy fixes. They don't really change the price of the house. Maybe you call in a handyman to fix a few things, but oftentimes we find something major. Now you're basically down to renegotiating the price of the home, or you have a buyer that's walking away. Here you are, you have all your stuff packed, you're ready to go, and now the sale of the house has fallen through. So
Yeah, and that number can be high. It could be something wrong with the roof. It could be the HVAC just stopped working, and you decided you don't want to get a warranty meanwhile. So it could cause a lot of issues. I agree.
And they could be small issues, but you never know what that issue looks like to a buyer. And sometimes they look like huge issues. It may be something that's a quick fix for any handyman or an electrician to go in and do. But they're seeing safety issues, or they're seeing dollar signs, or they're seeing re-inspection fee, or any of these things. And
Well, that's big from a financing perspective, right? And that's where before we started the episode, we were saying, everyone thinks that they're a home inspector or whatever. And I said, I don't. But, I just had a situation where they're in contract on a home. The inspection came back. The roof is beyond its lifespan. If an appraiser goes in, the appraiser is going to say this roof is beyond its lifespan. If that's the note that they put on there, we're not going to be able to finance. So we had to go from a regular conventional loan and move that into a renovation loan just to be able to close because of the electrical issues and the roof issue in itself. Otherwise, because the seller was not willing to do the work and invest the money prior to closing, sometimes a lot of sellers don't have the money. The only money they have is the equity in their home. So they don't have the ability to spend $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 getting a home up to par for someone to buy it. In this case, it worked out because we were able to switch the loan program to a renovation loan to get the work done for them. But, to another point, you're right. It becomes a potential negotiating situation. And I bet you, and I know it for a fact, that buyers go in with a sale price, an offer price, knowing that when they get the inspection back, they're going to be able to negotiate it even more. So imagine being a seller that has just taken that away. And whether you're taking it away or not, at least you know what's coming at you. And I think, they always say, luck favors the prepared, right? So I think that's important. I think that's great. I think, for the money it costs to have an inspection done, it's worth every single dollar if you're selling a home.
it's like you said, that you don't know what the buyer is seeing. I've had clients that were looking at a 1985 era house with wood siding on it, and it needs some maintenance. You know, it's wood siding. It deteriorates. And this seller, it's a couple $1,000s worth of work, but this buyer doesn't want to be bothered with it. Well, the next one that comes along is fine. They can do that themselves. You know, that's the business they've been in, and so they're fine with that. But the first one wanted nothing to do with it. Wasn't a huge repair
So
bill.
they just lost the buyer.
Yeah. Absolutely.
They just didn't want the hassle.
Yeah.
Well, and I think sellers often forget that paragraph regarding heat and air, plumbing, electrical, all those things have to be in working order.
Yes.
And so if there's something on that inspection, like you said, that indicates that it's not in working order, then the seller is required to fix it.
Yeah, and absolutely. Also, like the ability to inspect, right? We talked about the sellers having to leave all the utilities on and having things to where they're accessible. So let's share a little bit about that.
This is a weekly occurrence for home inspectors. You know, sellers aren't ready to have their house inspected. They don't, you know, they packed up. So they have boxes stacked up in the garage. Well, my attic access is in the garage over top of all those boxes. I'm not a moving man, right? I'm not going to move your boxes. I don't know what's in there. You could have valuables in there, you know, fragile items, medical equipment. You know, I'm not going to take the liability to damage those things and so I can get up into the attic. You know, your refrigerator is blocking the electrical panel. I guarantee you the buyer wants me to look in that electrical panel and make sure that that is safe. If I can't get to it, again, I'm not a moving man. I'm not going to move your furniture out of the way to inspect the panel. I mean, if it's a small chair or something and I can move it easy, fine.
Sure.
But if it's something heavy or valuable or fragile, I'm not going to do it. So, you know, little things about being prepared. Have your heat pumps and air handlers and electrical panels and your water heater accessible to me, because those are the big ticket items that the buyers want inspected, number one. Make it so that I'm able to get into the attic. You know, and then the little things. Change the light bulbs that aren't working. Because if I flip a light switch and a light bulb doesn't come on, guess what's going in my report? It will say it may be a light bulb,
Right.
but you need to have an electrician look at it. And those little things are adding up, you know.
Costing the seller dollars, potentially.
And or time, just
Yeah.
It
time.
doesn't look good on the inspection either.
The buyers are thinking dollar bills too,
Right.
you know, and so then if I have to come re-inspect because you weren't ready, there's more money. So I mean, it's just simple things like just be ready. Understand that I'm looking at, you know, I'm looking for major issues, so I'm going to be looking at, again, heat pumps, water heaters, electrical panels, you know, plumbing, all that stuff, have it accessible.
Great.
And maybe keep the utilities on.
That helps. Yeah, that helps. It's really hard to inspect plumbing with no water.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you guys also have figured out a really smart checklist here for sellers. And let's talk a little bit about this checklist. It seems like it's very thorough. It has many things that the sellers are supposed to make sure happen before an inspection.
Yeah, you know, a lot of sellers don't realize that they need to prepare for a home inspection. Things as simple as changing the light bulbs out, like we spoke about earlier, making sure that I have access to the appliances, your water heaters, your heat pumps, your air handlers, making sure your utilities are on. You know, little simple things. Make sure the screens are in the windows if you have screens there.
Access to attics, utilities,
Yeah,
all
you
that
know,
stuff.
the batteries in the thermostat are working. I've gone into homes where it's a fairly new heating and air system, but the batteries in the thermostat don't work, so I can't turn it off or on. So now it looks like your HVAC system doesn't work. So it's just, you know, a checklist for this seller.
That's great. I think it's wonderful for sellers to receive this, and maybe we'll try to put a copy of this actually in the video. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Yeah, we'll put a little link for it so you guys can see it, and you also offer free consultations and pre-listing inspections, right?
Yeah, pre-listing inspections, we push those. They seem to be picking up here lately, actually. I think,
It's a smart thing to do.
you know, and it's usually the more educated buyers or sellers that are doing them. because they don't want to run into that hurdle in the last 2 weeks. But yeah, I'll do free consultations too. If you buy a home and you're living in that home and 6 years from now you think you have an issue with something, give me a call, and as long as I can fit it in my schedule, I'll make a stop by and check it out.
Well, thank you for coming in. We're really glad you guys were here with us today. What do you think? Any other closing stories? Maybe like a funny story?
Do you have any?
Funny story?
I have one. I have
Oh, you have one?
I
Okay,
have a
great.
small one. So a couple weeks ago, and I can't remember if it was Newsweek or Forbes, did an article on what to do if you're a seller to get ready for a home inspection. And the number one thing in that article was don't be there. Don't be at home.
That makes sense. It makes sense.
It can be an emotional process, you know, especially if you've been living in that home for a long time and you see
Yeah.
that home inspector taking picture after picture after picture. A lot of times I'm just taking pictures of styles and materials. You know, what is this made of? What is the brand on this? But you don't know that. And so your blood pressure starts to rise. And then you start following me around, asking me questions, and I can't tell you anything.
Right.
You know, I work for the buyer.
Yeah.
You know, so legally I can't divulge anything unless it's an immediate safety concern. So the number one thing on that list is just don't be there. And if you have to be there,
Have you ever had, a seller that was there and kind of chased you around the house?
yeah,
Probably makes your job more difficult.
it does. I mean, it's distracting,
Yeah.
right? So I have a system that I go through, you know, and I have a process. Home inspectors, like for me, I was an architecture student, so I'm very process oriented. I'm very linear thinking. And so I have a process that I go through, and I do it with every home. And if you get me out of that process, I almost feel sometimes like I have to go back to the beginning and start over.
Right.
You know, and so
Right.
you're more likely to miss things. So, you know, even for the buyer, you know, I work for you, but if you plan on being in that inspection, and I suggest that all buyers come to the inspection at least to meet me, ask questions.
I would ask them to come in like the last maybe 30 minutes,
Perfect.
40 minutes, or at least, talk to you and kind of see when you would prefer, because you don't want to, as a buyer, you don't want to distract the inspector from doing what they're supposed to do for you.
I think that's a brilliant thing to tell your clients. You know, come in the first 30 minutes or the last 30 minutes, whichever you prefer. You know, if you want to stay for the whole thing, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. As I see things, I will typically point them out and try and educate. But for the most part, I'm going through my process and I'm trying to stick to that process. It gives me less of a chance of missing anything.
And for sellers, if they follow your checklist and be prepared, they're more likely to have probably a better appearing home inspection. You know, there's not going to be so many little things
That's the key.
that seem to add up to a big deal, but really aren't. You know,
Your home
And
inspection
that's-
went
if
from
they
80
prepare-
pages to, 60 pages.
Right.
I have 10 less photographs in there.
Right.
You know, that matters.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and it'll help negotiating. You already know if there's something wrong.
Yep.
You've already fixed it, or you know it's there, so you can either disclose it right away, and that'll give you the upper hand in negotiating. Say, okay, you knew that
yeah.
this wasn't working.
And I think too, for a buyer looking at a home inspection report, the fewer little bitty things that there are, the more secure they feel in the home. The more secure they feel regarding the heat pump or, the larger issues. So
Absolutely.
it can make a huge difference. Be prepared.
My topic of the week is the Members Club Enclave at the Grand Dunes. This community is located on the Members Private Golf Course in the Grand Dunes. This course was designed in collaboration between PGA Hall of Fame inductee Nick Price and award-winning golf course architect Craig Shiner. The golf course features long greens, which helps the course seem different each time you play. This community is in the Grand Dunes community, meaning you can enjoy the amenities they offer, beginning with the 27,000 square foot member club designed in old world Tuscany style with exquisite dining, event rooms, and much more. The two 18-hole golf courses, including the area's private golf course. The tennis club with 10 courts. The Intercoastal Waterway Marina with restaurants and fun activities. And also the social centerpiece of the Grand Dunes, the Ocean Club. This is a 25,000 square foot Mediterranean style club where the homeowners can enjoy their piece of heaven at the beach. The private access to the Atlantic, restaurants, bars, and well-appointed event rooms, as well as multiple pools to enjoy. These elegantly appointed homes of the Members Enclave offer beautiful Tuscany, Mediterranean, and Old World styles of architecture. This community has 54 sites, and just a few pieces of land are available for sale. There are about 3 homes for sale and 9 sold in the last 12 months. These homes ranged between $750,000 and $1.8 million in the last 12 months. Average days on the market is 379 days. Click on the link in the description below to see what's available now. Thank you for watching. Alyssa Lightman here, your host. And until next time, this is The Lightman Show.